Hello and welcome to lesson 36. Before I start, I promised to look up one word, which was wenig, which means little, and it is related to a word weh, and weh is woe, or more commonly known as sore. So if something is little, it kind of causes pain, and I like this association. So that was wenig. Let's continue with the story. Yeah, it seems that Simone and Stefan have caught the old lady, and they think she has kidnapped the dogs and blackmailed the helper of the Chancellor. Sorry. So. Und warum sind die Näpfe und die Halsbänder im Keller von Herrn Fischer gewesen? This is one single sentence. I can see that by looking at the verbs. Sind gewesen, and both these words mean basically are been, yeah, so have been in English. And warum, you remember, warum, what about, and nowadays that is simply why. Have the nappies, the bowls of the dogs, and the Hals, you remember? Neck. And Band is the lace. Yeah? So necklaces in the cellar, in the cell, yeah? From Mr. Fischer Bean. So why were these there? Good question. Simone hat Zweifel. Zweifel is a beautiful word. It contains the word to and fold. So whenever you are twofold, means you have the choice between two things, you are in doubt. And in German you have doubt. You are not in doubt. You simply have doubt. You have two ideas, opinions, yeah? And therefore you are in doubt. Aber das ist doch logisch, sagt Stefan aufgeregt. Aufgeregt should be your best friend by now. Ronald Reagan was moving up and down, so excited. He's excited here, he's not upset. And that is doch, is just emphasis, logisch. I hope you can identify easily on your own. But that is logical, says Stefan excitedly. Die beiden arbeiten zusammen. The both arbeit zusammen. Also something you can figure out on your own by now. So let's take some time. This one you do the same. The only thing you always hear, macht Sinn. Some people always say, it has to be ergibt Sinn, which kind of ergeben means it results in sense, yeah. But honestly, whether you say, nobody says ergibt Sinn, and it's so stiff, it's really macht Sinn. People think this comes from English, which might be, but it's really what we use nowadays, yeah? So das macht Sinn is exactly what you use. Ergibt Sinn is, you might read this and you might hear people correcting you, ignore them. These are people who think they know things better. So, but before the Z is always a bit confusing because you have to think, what is it? Is it now one person or is it more than one? You can actually see this by the end of the verb, which here is en, so it must be a plural. And if it was a capital Z, it would be possibly also a single person, but the misleader, which is the kidnapper, confront, must they still the hounds befreien. You know, kind of results in being free, so they have to free the hounds, the dogs, before they confront the old lady and her companion. Schnell gehen sie zurück zu Herrn Müller und erzählen ihm von ihrem Fund. Schnell. We have an interesting word that's called Strom, schnellen. I actually don't know, if you're in wild water, you rapids, yeah, beautiful. And actually, you know, rapid is basically schnell. So Stromschnellen, Strom is a stream of water, and then something that goes down or rapid. Yeah, stream rapids in German. Maybe that helps you. Schnell means rapid, rapidly or fast. Go, and again, gehen indicates more than one person. They to back, very literal. Of course, it just means back to Mr. M. And you remember erzählen. Yeah, in French, raconter. Compter is also to count. So if you give account of something, you're basically telling something. Him, from, which is of course of, their, found, of their finding. Yeah, der Fund comes from finden. The past of finden is gefunden, so Fund shouldn't go as much trouble. So they go back to Mr. Müller, the assistant, and want to tell him what they found. So, and that person, that's 2 sentences here. There's a comma. Comma indicates the end of a sentence most of the time. So he's doing this, staubt ab. Staub, I didn't look up anymore. I mentioned that somewhere, possibly in... so interesting. No, I actually looked it up. So stauben reminds me of to stub, and or to stub off, and it of course means to dust off. Yeah, Staub is just dust, and if you have Sternenstaub, yeah, it's not stern dust, it is simply star dust, and that's lovely. So he's dusting off at the moment books. And by the way, here's another one, Buchstabe. Stab is kind of a stick as well, so it's a book stick, and I think the story behind this is that they, well actually Buch comes from Buche, which is a tree, sort of tree, and in English it's a beech, lovely. So it's basically a beech stick, because they made sticks out of beeches, and with these they built the first letters for possibly printing or writing bigger things. So Buchstabe is not related, well, it's related to Bücher, so because Buchstaben are found in books. Yeah, so it's all related. So he is dusting off his books in the Bibliothek. Thek is very likely some kind of place, because we also have Diskothek. We have die Theke, which is a counter, thank you. Counter. Yeah. So Biblio is like the Bible. Bible is the book for many people, so this is where you find many books, which is the library. Yeah, not much to explain there. Let's summarize this. Als, when, the, both, him, the, Nachricht, I'm thinking whether I remember where it came from. I've explained this before, but Nachricht is a message. There's one thing you need to know. Just to give you some space, we have die Nachricht, which is the message. And we have die Nachrichten, which could be the messages, but actually when Germans talk about die Nachrichten, they mean the news. Lots of messages, right? So keep that in mind. Ich schaue die Nachrichten, I'm watching the news. So they bring the message over. Yeah. Simone freut sich sehr. Should be doable for you. Stellen Sie sich vor, Herr Müller, wir haben die Möpse gefunden. Vorstellen or sich vorstellen has 2 meanings. I mentioned that before, but can never be repeated often enough. Ich stelle mich vor. I introduce myself. And then we have sich vorstellen, sich etwas vorstellen. And that is what we have here. Ich stelle mir vor. I imagine. Yeah, fascinating. So 2 times the same, but the etwas makes the difference. So etwas is the accusative that leaves only the dative for this, sich. Here we have sich on its own, so it takes the accusative. So, imagine yourself, Mr. Müller. Wir haben die Möpse gefunden, should be clear to you. And this phrase too, es geht Ihnen gut. The Ihnen, of course, is not capitalized, otherwise they would say, hey, Mr. Müller, are you doing well or you are doing well? It's a lowercase I, so it is referring to die Möpse here. Sie brauchen sich keine Sorgen mehr zu machen. Here we have brauchen, and brauchen is a bit special. Brauchen comes from to brook, yeah? To need yourself, not any, because we have die Sorgen, which is plural, sorrows, so you don't need to make any more sorrows, meaning you don't have to worry anymore. Yeah, and the brauchen with a negative requires the zu plus infinitive. Yeah, das brauchst du nicht zu machen is also possible. You don't need to do that. If you don't use the nicht, that doesn't work. Yeah, das brauchst du machen somehow it doesn't work like this. Yeah, brauchen is usually used with nouns. Ich brauche ein Auto. I need a car. But if it's negative, you have this zu plus a verb, and that's doable. That's stuff for A2, so don't worry about it too much. As I say, this is also to prime you, that you have heard this before, and there's no need for you to remember this. Wirklich, you know what works is real, right? So really means those are, ja, fantastic. And here we have Neuigkeiten, something that is new. New you recognize, so novelties. Yeah, new novel, you get it. So basically fantastic news. So remember what news was in German? The other news, the news in the TV, yeah, that's this. But Neuigkeiten, something that's new, is novel. It's also in English news. Wunderbar, einfach großartig, grinst Müller, and well, you have grin here, that explains the word. That was chapter 36. See you in chapter 37. Enjoy.